everybody wants to get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
Today, I have some unorthodox tips and tricks for you guys that you might want to try out on some of your own pieces. And we're gonna do that by breaking down the work from Opium. He's got some really awesome letters, some really classical looking letters that I think you guys are really gonna enjoy if you're not familiar with him already. So without wasting any time, let's hop right into this first piece right here, which I absolutely love. And it brings us to the very first thing I want to talk about, and that's letter name weight. Now, normally in graffiti, we size all of our letters to be roughly equal or relatively the same. That way they all balance well with one another. But something that we oftentimes don't consider with letter name weight is our letter name positioning and how that actually interacts with letter name weight. So letter name weight and visual weight in art have a lot to do with one another. Visual weight is essentially how much attention something grabs. So there's many factors that can come into image weight. Things like the size of something, its perceived weight in reality, as well as the position of something. And that's what's particularly important for this example right here, because in art, gravity is persistent. There's this constant influence and suggested gravity that influences our images. So the higher something is off the ground, the more it appears to weigh, because there's anticipation building up as our brains immediately expect that thing to fall back towards the ground. However, if we just draw something that's already on the ground, for example the letter M here, then it appears more grounded and it doesn't have as much image weight based on its positioning specifically because it already is on the ground. Therefore, it's not building any anticipation. So now that we understand that image weight can be based off size, position, so on and so forth, how does all that apply to Opium's piece here? Well, the first thing we got to talk about is how he's got these kind of competing factors. He's got not only size building a lot of image weight, but in other areas he's got positioning building a lot of image weight. And these two different factors are happening on opposite sides of the piece, and they're working with one another to bring everything together. So check this out. Opium begins with a really small O that's positioned really high off the actual ground itself. That right there is building all of the O's image weight because this thing is tiny, right? It's not a big letter O at all whatsoever. In fact, even if we were to include the extension in this little total space right here, with the extension, it's still smaller than most of the letters. It's smaller than the P, it's even smaller than the letter I, it's comparable in size to the U with its extension, and it's much smaller than the M. Yet, based on its positioning, it's building significant image weight and letter name weight. Now, he still needs some kind of presence on the left-hand side as far as letter structure is concerned, and we see him implement a lot of that through the letter P. Having a really strong and large letter P allows him to once again build the necessary structure. The lowercase letter I is one of the weakest letters, if not the weakest letter in the alphabet, so he's got the letter I here with two little extensions right there, typical to see on the letter I, building a significant image weight, and it's also reasonably high off the ground, but it's actually closer to the ground than the next letter U. Now the U builds a lot of its image weight for a different reason. Not only does the U raise slightly higher than the I does, but it also has a little bit more clarity as far as its letter structure is concerned. So not only does the U gain a lot of its image weight through the clarity of the letter structure itself, but also through contrast. While it does have interior details such as those, it doesn't have a lot of overlapping things and a lot of intricate details like you're seeing in other letters. And it's here where his piece begins to open up with that kind of clarity. The M, on the other hand, gains pretty much all of its image weight for a totally different reason. This is where we really see size begin to anchor the piece down. And as we get closer to the ground, the M skyrockets in size, becoming really large, and even if we were to consider the letter's total space, the letter M's total space would be almost equal to half of the piece's length overall. Look at that size right there. So the M is really responsible for building most of the image weight on the right-hand side, and the U, as a result of that, has to mitigate some of that image weight. That way it doesn't bring too much letter name weight to the right-hand side. And to wrap this all up, how did he do that? Well, he simply just arced his baseline at an angle. And that's something that you guys can try out. By simply arcing your baseline like that, you're going to change pretty much every single one of your fundamentals drastically. So if you feel like you've been in a bit of a rut, you feel like you're not sure where to take your graffiti, try mixing things up with a simple change like that. And then give yourself a challenge, like keep things balanced, or make one side weigh a lot more and make one side weigh a lot less, while still making the fundamentals work. That should offer up some really nice challenges for you guys. Now, if you guys want to learn more about this topic and letter name weight and how to use it, and just graffiti's fundamentals in general, check out our book. It's got information in there, man, that I wish I had back when I first started doing graffiti, and books like that just didn't exist. So if you want to check it out, if you want to pick it up, we have ebooks over on our online store, theartistblock.inc, and physical copies over on Amazon. Of course, with these videos, videos, you can find Opium's link in the description down below. I'll be sure to go ahead and include that there for you. So moving on to the next piece, we have Too Fast. One of the pieces that he did that it might honestly be my favorite. I really dig this piece quite a bit. I love the fact that he took one of the heaviest letters in the alphabet, the letter T, and he made it not weigh an obscene amount, which is usually what happens with the letter T, right? The letter T normally weighs a significant portion for a piece. And here, despite the fact that it's leaning over, which gives a lot of image weight, its size mitigates a lot of that weight. Had he had the T being a normal size, let's say it were to reach the cap line like the F does, we would have been looking at something more like that. And that would have been a tremendous amount of weight. So working the T in there at this size was great. It was awesome. It also helps to reflect not only the uniformity and similarity with the F, because it is proportioned as far as these two areas is concerned, but the smaller stature also looks really nice with the letter A as well. I also really like, and you know what, this is actually a completely different tip that I didn't expect to go into this video with, but I like the fact that he didn't take certain opportunities for letter uniformity and similarity. Normally, it's a great idea to take whatever opportunities you can find for letter uniformity and similarity. So for example, this area right here is uniform to this area right here, and therefore those two areas flow. That's good. But he had the perfect opportunity for letter uniformity and similarity right here with the 2, and also doing a similar thing right here with the T, which is something that we actually see very commonly on the letter T. But he decided to skip on that and not do it at all, which I think was the better option, because not only would this kind of detail taken up a lot of extra space in this area for a structure specifically, or an extension specifically, it also wouldn't have given him the chance for as much interesting 3D, as much depth as he got. So when you have 3D like this, depth and negative space become a very important tool to use, because we want to include a lot of that, right? Things like this area shows good amounts of depth, which is what we're looking for since we're doing 3D. And by including an extension that pops out here with an arrow, and including this tiny extension here, and this compressed extension plus a star, all of that gives us plenty of positive space versus negative space. It creates a more interesting silhouette in these areas right here. And there's a lot more value to be had there because he already has a decent amount of flow. He doesn't need more flow. He's got plenty of it. So including this isn't really necessary at that point. This is just a random thing, I also really like how he feeds the structure of the F with this extension here and directly into the A pretty much, even though these two pieces aren't connected. The directional momentum of those lines is beautifully executed. Now honestly, this right here is one of the pieces that made me want to do this video in the first place. I saw this piece and I was like, man, I gotta share this with people. So alright, so check this out. I knew about Opium's work before this video, but I've only seen like 1 or 2 pieces and that's it. You know, pretty much what you guys see in the B-roll, because I've shown him in B-roll in the past. But like, I didn't know about Opium's work, you know? I didn't see all the pieces that I saw when trying to make this video. And when I saw this piece, I was shocked. I really enjoy this piece specifically. And I enjoy it so much, especially coming from Opium, specifically because of how different and how funky this piece is. It's dope to see graffiti with a twist on it, you know, so something that's different and not your typical kind of thing that you see in graffiti. This is the kind of innovation that we need more of in graffiti. I enjoy the fact that I can see the letter M faintly drawn in here within the letter structures. It makes me more interested in looking at this piece beyond just reading the name and, you know, dissecting the style behind it or whatever the case might be. And what I find really compelling about this image is the fact that you have little areas like this yellow piece that shoots up in this more square fashion and then comes out to a very obvious arrow, but they have this glitch effect that continuously happens through these areas, yet all of this still seems to function properly. And having that level of functionality, despite the visuals not really making sense, for example this extension coming seemingly out of nowhere, that right there is more interesting to me. That right there is dope and takes graffiti to a different level that you don't often see it at. Despite all of that stylistic influence, he still manages to maintain all of graffiti's fundamentals. And we get to see that with the O being pretty much right here, the P following up in this area over here, the I, once again with, you know, that kind of heart shape at the bottom, and then the tittle up there, the U, and then the M over here. The negative space management is your typical standard negative space management. The letter name weight still weighs out properly, and despite the fact that the O, P, I, and the U are all positioned higher than the bottom of the M, over here, what I really enjoy is the fact that this faded structure actually reaches and shares the same baseline, filling in a lot of this otherwise negative space, which is a great attention to detail. So once again, great letter name weight and amazing flow. You'll see see letter uniformity with, you know, the heart shape on the I and the M. They're even the same color. Not to mention the fact that he's got consistent extensions as well. And all of this is just a great example to show that no matter how unique your graffiti is, no matter what you want to do stylistically, you can still maintain the fundamentals in your work and produce something that's absolutely mind-boggling. Now here's something to understand. In art, we have to still balance things. So you'll notice, while this is a very technical piece, it's technical because of the design philosophy he went into this with. The letters themselves balance that out by being very simplistic. If he was to do wild style letters with this on top of that, and both of those were at the same level of technicality, then it's completely possible that the finished product would breach the style threshold of graffiti and enter into a whole different art form at that point. It might become just an abstract piece of art, depending on how far you take it. And while that might be completely fine, that also may not be the objective when doing something like this. So you do have to always consider that kind of balance and that give and take when you're doing any art form for that matter. Needless to say, I'm happy you guys recommended I check out Opium because, once again, I knew of his work before, but man, I'm a fan after, you know, delving deeper into his stuff. He's got some awesome graffiti. But dudes, don't forget to check out Opium in the description down below. I got a link to his Instagram. He's definitely worth a follow. And while you're down there, if you want to make the learning process of graffiti a lot easier, and you want years worth of information packed into one easy to read book, check out our new book in the description down below. We have ebooks at theartistblock.inc with physical copies over on Amazon. Now if you just want to check out some more YouTube videos, we have a graffiti how to do playlist right up here with more graffiti content right down here. And I'll catch you guys back here next week. Thanks for watching.